Originally intended to be on Windows, the Dreamcast, and PlayStation, Messiah was finally released on Windows in 2000 on the 31st of March in North America and September the 15th in other regions. According to an interview with Mike Person by IGN in 1998, Messiah was very much designed from the beginning with a console release in mind, with many technical limitations of the PlayStation taken into account as they were developing the game. One of the major technical features implemented within Messiah's engine was a technology dubbed RTDAT, which stood for Real-Time Deformation and Tessellation. Previously generally referred to as the character system, this technology was heavily publicized during the development of the game. It essentially allowed the game to scale itself to your system on the fly by tessellating a character's mesh based on both their distance and the general level of performance of the computer system. This system was also demonstrated at the Game Developers Conference by Michael Person in 1998, in which he goes on to state that they originally tried a voxel-based solution for an earlier project on the Sega Saturn, however noted that the amount of detail they could put in didn't scale very well when viewed up close. To solve this, they introduced a level of detail system for the voxels, so depending on the distance, it would switch between a different set of voxels for varying detail. This was very quickly taking up a lot of their available storage space on the Saturn, and they concluded it wasn't a viable solution in the long term. The team, while working on Messiah, developed a number of tools to assist with setting meshes up for the character system. The character meshes were created within 3D Studio Max, with a large amount of detail put into them, before they were managed by the team's proprietary tools. Using these tools, the models were rigged, bone influences were painted on, and then the mesh was cut into separate body parts. Each of these body parts could be tessellated independently from one another, and sections of the mesh could be marked out so that their general shape was retained. For the environments in Messiah, there was the background engine. Unlike most engines at the time that used BSP trees, like Quake and Half-Life, Messiah instead used a portal rendering system in which levels are split into a collection of different sets that are connected together by portals. A portal was essentially a door or window that defined the link between two sets. If a door was opened, for example, the set on the other side would become active or visible. In another case, if the player was in one set looking through a portal, then the set linked to the other side of that portal would then become visible. The environment was split into separate tiles. Depending on what was visible from one portal to another, these tiles, including whatever would be occupying them, would be culled from the view to save on rendering time. Additionally, every triangle within the view space of the camera would be clipped within the visible area. Messiah was unique for its time in that content, such as textures, was streamed in from the CD or hard drive as the player played through the game. This system worked well, considering the game was designed to appear as just one progressive world, rather than individual levels. Each of the levels were created in 3D Studio Max, with certain parts of the geometry specifically named so that the engine could easily identify them. For filling the levels with content, the team used a piece of software they developed called RenEd. This allowed texturing, light placement, pathing for the AI, sound placement, and finally, object placement. For lighting the environments, Messiah originally used an adaptive light map solution. This was quite unique for the time, because it would adapt the resolution of the light map during processing time depending on the amount of detail that was needed. The end result being less memory usage, which was likely in consideration of the PlayStation, and more realistic lighting. As can be seen from this earlier footage, the difference is quite clear, with shadows being cast throughout the environment. It doesn't appear as if this survived into the final game, however, with it instead using pre-processed per-vertex lighting. It's unclear why light maps were removed, but this was likely out of consideration of the PlayStation. At one point, the AI within the game was also intended to use a neural network, which means that the AI would adapt and learn over time. This unfortunately didn't survive into the final game, with it instead using a state machine, which is a rather simple technology that's still used by most games for AI even to this day. However, Messiah featured its own complex scripting language, somewhat similar to the C programming language, which was heavily used for influencing how the AI would behave. This scripting language also was used for handling triggers, events in the environment, and defining the behavior of a number of different objects in the world. Interestingly enough, the scripts handling Messiah's logic can be found packaged with the game, and these can easily be modified by anyone. Using these scripts, you can pretty much change a considerable portion of the game. They could be easily modified, and it was intended that upon modification, the game would reload the changes, and those would appear inside the game. However, this functionality appears to be broken in the final release. Why isn't quite clear. However, there's 2 test releases of Messiah, and this functionality seems to still work in both. And I think that about does it for this video. Next time we'll probably be covering a gameplay analysis. If you look in the description, you'll find a document that was written for this video, which I highly recommend reading because there's a number of sources and information I couldn't obviously include in this video. And with that said, until next time, I guess, feel free to comment and point out anything I got wrong. I'm aware there's some extra information I could have put in, which I couldn't with the time that I had, but otherwise I hope you enjoyed.